Welcome back to the process group Pentagon. Today, we're going to put another coat of paint on what we started talking about previously. So let's jump straight in. Last episode, we talked about the knowledge areas. And I ended by telling you that the knowledge areas are surrounded by the concept, broader concept of process groups. So don't forget, we have initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. Think of that as the big container that contains processes belonging to each one of these. Now, in today's episode, we are going to talk about interrelationships between the knowledge areas. So, we're going to start off going deeper into each knowledge area and its interrelationships. So today we're going to talk first about integration, and we're going to talk about how integration relates to everything else. And we're going to do that one by one. So let's start off with integration and scope. In integration, you get your project charter. That becomes a direct input to planning scope management because the project charter contains high-level scope. The same for schedule. The project charter becomes an input to plan schedule management because it contains milestones and the overall timeline. Now, what else do we get from integration that affects scope and schedule? You beginning to see the interrelationship? We could also talk about work performance data that comes from executing precisely direct to manage project work, and it goes into control scope. It goes into control schedule. I'm just giving you examples, okay? I want you to do this on your own. Continue the mantra. What comes from integration that's used in scope? How does integration relate to schedule? And so on. And if you think about this overarching rule of thumb, you can say the project charter, the project management plan, and work performance data are pretty recurrent across scope and schedule. And when you take a look at cost, yes, you see the same thing. You see the project charter going in to plan cost management. You see the project management plan going into all those processes there. And you also see work performance data going into control cost. And that same pattern is what you realize from integration to quality. Same thing, you will find project charter, project management plan, and work performance data as being used in all these places. What about resources? Same thing. Resource management, see the project charter being used in plan resource management and everything else. Project management plan being used as an input to all those processes. And then you see work performance data going into control resources. Same thing with communications. You see the same relationship. All right. Now, with that said, you do know we have risk right there in the middle. So just ignore the arrows. Let's put risk up. Here's risk. So I want you to think, how does integration relate to risk? Exactly the same way. Same way. So when you think about risk, it's no different. So let's take a curvy line and draw this to get around. Think about this going like this. It makes no difference. What about procurement and stakeholder? Same thing. Integration gives the project charter to plan procurement management, the project management plan to all of its processes, and work performance data to control procurement. Same thing for stakeholder. Project charter goes in to identify stakeholders. Project charter is used to identify the stakeholders because it has a stakeholder list, key stakeholder list. And work performance data also goes as an input. And that's the relationship from integration to those. But what I would also love for you to do is the reverse. And I'm just going to use this as one example. You take this, you run with it, you use it to understand very quickly the interrelationships. You're going to be able to go through in your head mentally and ask, is there an interrelationship? It's either yes or no. If there's one, good. If there's not, then move on. That's it. Okay. So after doing this from integration to all of these knowledge areas, I want you to go to the next level. And the next level is to ask the question, how does stakeholder contribute to integration? Is there anything I get from here that I would use here? And I want to show you how to think about this. Whenever you're in doubt, just open up your PMBOK guide and check to see for where you have a stakeholder register or stakeholder engagement plan going into anywhere. And you know what the answer is? The stakeholder engagement plan is one of the inputs that goes into the developed project management plan process. So there is some interrelationship there. You also have in the process, and I'm just going to read it real quick so I give you the right page. See if we can find that. We're looking for places where the stakeholder register is used. So in managed project knowledge, yes, you need your stakeholder register. See, so we have our stakeholder register going into 4.4 as an input. That is a very good example of how you should consider your stakeholders in some of these processes pretty explicitly. I mean, you should consider them everywhere, but specific mention is made of the stakeholder register there. It's not as though PMI is going to ask you questions about these, but this is just logic, all right? So here's the logic, real quick. I could have change requests coming from all of these places going into integration. Change requests. Change requests could come from every single one of these knowledge areas. And guess what? We have to process them in integration. And guess what else? We also have subsidiary plans going in from all of these places to integration. That's the summary, okay? So subsidiary plans, sometimes baselines, and what else? Change requests. And what else? Work performance information. We can find a lot of these all throughout the PMBOK guide. And you see mention being made of how they're going into processes of integration. But instead of going to the itty bitty processes, I just want you to think free form. All right. So that's an example of what I want you to do as you study each of these knowledge areas. Let's go ahead and do it for yourself. All right. That's that for integration. Tomorrow, we'll take a look at the next one. Take a look at scope.